Alright. Hi everyone. Thanks so much for coming out to learn Torah with me. We're going to start because I gave you a 6-page source sheet for an hour, so that's very 10 minutes a page. Let's go. Cool. So we're talking about head and hair covering for men and women, and tonight we're talking about sources in the Talmud. If you want to learn anything practical, you will not get that tonight. Tonight is all the Talmud, which then got built on for generations, which evolved into like the varied practices of Jews today. And the Talmudic sources are very divergent, but they provide some of the backbone for I mean, they are the backbone, they are the backbone for anyone modern who's talking about it, which is why you obviously have to start there. So I think we're just going to dive in. And there's almost no sources on here that I think are skippable, so hopefully we're really gonna make good progress, okay? So just if you want a sense of the pace at which we're gonna be moving, it will be such that we can hopefully get to everything. So my teacher, Rabbi Dov Linzer, always says that you can tell a lot about a person and their feelings on a halachic subject from where they begin. And for me, we're beginning with the dress of the Kohanim. So you can just look at the parts that are underlined if you want. I'm not going to read this whole section, but this is from parts of the Torah that people usually forget about. And I think it first of all, the dress of the Kohanim is really interesting and beautiful. But we can read the second pasuk Bet. It's in bold in the Hebrew. V'asita bigdei kodesh la'aron achicha. You will make sacred vestments for your brother Aaron. And what's the purpose of those sacred vestments? L'chavodu l'tifaret. For glorious adornment, for honor and for glory. And so then, and when they put on those clothing, right? So he'll put on these clothes, and that will make him holy and sanctified, and then that will consecrate him for priesthood. So it's the clothes themselves that turn a person into a thing, right? So just based on this source, that is the purpose of the priestly clothing. Aaron and his sons put on these clothes, and that makes them a Kohen. And one of those articles of clothing is the mitznefet, which is the turban. So that gets introduced here, and now we'll skip to verse 36, or even 37. Never mind. Hang on, I'm missing a verse in the Hebrew here, I think. That's weird. Are you guys missing it also? Yeah, Lamed Vav, that's a really important pasuk. I don't know where that went. Okay, but the point of it is that you make an nate, I think is the rosette of pure gold, and it says on it Kodesh LaHashem. Oh no, here, it's here. It's just V'asita tzitz zahav tahor v'tachta alav v'tuchei chotam Kodesh LaHashem. So you'll make this rosette, this tzitz of gold, and it says on it Kodesh LaHashem. V'samto to b'til techelet. Where else do we have a b'til techelet? Tzitzit, right? Okay, you have your tzitz. It goes on your b'til techelet. Okay, cute. Side point. V'samto to al b'til techelet. You put it on your blue cord, v'haya al hamitznefet, and then you put it on the turban, al mul pnei hamitznefet yiheh, it's on the forehead, to the front of the turban. So you have your mitznefet, your Kohen turban, and then you have your tzitz, which is a piece of gold that says on it Kodesh LaHashem, holy to the Lord, and that's tied around the forehead of the Kohen. Okay, and then there's just lots and lots of detail about this mitznefet, not more detail necessarily about the mitznefet than there is about any other piece of priestly clothing, but the point is, again, that, so what the Kohanim are wearing on their heads, they're wearing their mission statement on their forehead, right, Kodesh LaHashem, and this turban is part of the priestly garb along with tzitzit. And I think the tzitzit thing is a little bit of a giveaway or what we just said about tzitzit is a little bit of a giveaway because what does it mean then when we wear tzitzit, or when, I guess in the Orthodox community more typically men wear tzitzit, is that we're wearing priestly clothing. But that is not the only piece of priestly clothing that we wear. which is, now we're moving on to source number 2. So in the morning we say a series of brachot called Birkut HaShachar. If anyone's not familiar with the full text that I'm about to quote only tiny parts of, it will enhance your morning prayers very much to learn this Gemara in full. But the idea originally was that you would say Birkut HaShachar as you were having various experiences or doing various parts of your routine. So imagine a world in which your alarm clock goes off, and you say, Baruch Atah Hashem, right? You make a bracha on that experience. And then you open your eyes and you say, Bokeach Ivrim, and then you put your feet on the ground and you make another bracha, and you go to the bathroom and you make another bracha, and you brush your teeth and you make another bracha, right? That's what they're imagining about your morning routine, is that at every juncture along that routine, you're saying to Hashem, wow, it's amazing, I woke up this morning and I'm able to do this thing. And one of those things is, okay, well, let's start again. We'll just read this whole little bit, right? Ki shma kol tarnagola. So when your alarm clock goes off, or when you hear the sound of the rooster, lema baruch asher natan l'sach v'ivina l'achin ben yom u'v'layla. You should say, blessed is the one who gave heart, the understanding to distinguish between day and night. The understanding of the word sechvi is complicated. We're going to skip over it. Ki patach einei. When you open your eyes, lema baruch bokeach ivrim. When you open your eyes, you say, blessed is Hashem who gives sight to the blind. And here's the one that I'm most excited about. Ki paris sudra al reshe. When you put your turban on your head, lema baruch oter Yisrael betifara. That is when you say, blessed is the one who crowns Israel with glory. I have to tell you, the morning after my wedding, when I woke up in the morning and put on a turban for the first time, this was like the most magical moment. I was like, wow, like oter Yisrael betifara, like it was just totally like a transformative like experience vis-a-vis this bracha and this new like mitzvah that I was doing, and it felt to me glorious, which is why we're starting with head covering as glory, because I think if we're going to talk about all the reasons why maybe it's bad to not cover your hair, which is what a lot of the classic sources that you might have learned before talk about, we should talk about why you should, yes, cover your hair. Why is it even an assumption that you would cover your hair? What is the spiritual value in covering your hair? And my sense is that covering your hair makes you a Kohen and is glorious. That has been also my personal experience of it, which is, so just to like put my cards on the table, like everyone has very, very varied experiences with their head covering, whether they are men or women. Some people love being identifiable as a Jew. I always hated that as a observant woman who was not yet married, I was not identifiable. I would walk around with my brother and people would like bagel him left and right, and I would be wearing like a skirt and leggings and things that like totally for people like in the like modern Orthodox know would be like, I see you, but people who weren't would just be like, you're a person. I would have so much like hijab envy of like, I wish I represented the Jews with the way I walked around in the world, I probably still don't, because Muslim women do the Muslim equivalent of bageling towards me on the street here often, but I love it. I love that like my clothing represent that, and so for me, which is why we're starting with this, head covering as glory. Okay, cool. And just one other piece that I think really backs this up is there's this famous story of Kimchit. So now we're source number 3, it's New Rabbanan. Shiv'a banim hayu leKimchit. Kimchit had 7 sons, v'kulan shimshu b'kehuna gdola, and they were all high priests. So that gets explained in the Talmud. It's not like all of her sons died. It's like one of them was spit on by someone in the market and decided he was too impure to act as a high priest. So then his brother came in and acted instead of him for a day. Whatever. Like there's all these stories there. See Masachet Yoma. But anyways, she had 7 sons. They all were Kohanim Gedolim. Amar la Chachamim, so the sages asked her, Ma asit shezachit lakach? What did you do that you merited all of this? Amar lahem, miyamai lo ra'u korot beiti kla'ei sa'ari. She says, in all my days, the beams of my house never saw the braids of my hair. Meaning, right, not any amount of hair. This is hair, not head. This is hair, not turban. My hair was totally covered, and what that merits her is this like priestly status, right? So this connection between head covering and priestliness gets carried over into this Talmudic story also. This Talmudic story is certainly what people like on the, I know I said we weren't going to talk any tachlis today, but like if you wanted to start with a story that would say cover your hair all the time inside your home, like to the most extreme, this would be your starting point in that argument. Okay? And in fact, indeed, it is. We're probably not really even going to look at sources like that over the course of this series, but you can just know, and it makes sense. But the rabbis already temper it by the last line. So they say, lots of people are as frum as you, and they don't get this. So that can't even be what caused your priestly success. That's always like a nice thing when the Talmud sort of says, I don't know about that. Okay, so that was head covering as glory. That's kind of my opening shot. I think that's kind of the most non-standard thing I have on this source sheet. But what I like about the idea of head covering as glory, which is one, what I said before, which is that a lot of people start from the sources which we're about to see of like, what about a woman who doesn't cover her hair? Whereas I want to start from a place of like, covering your hair can be awesome. And here's like what I think the Torah has to say about what it represents. So that's part one. And then there was a part two. I don't know. Whatever. Okay, great. And then part two is also just to like start from this like super positive place of like it's not just about like nakedness or like your husband divorcing you or something like that. Like it can have all of these kind of positive resonances in it. Okay, so now we're gonna like totally like jump over to the other side of the spectrum. Do people have questions, by the way, so far? No? Okay. Yes?
So, this might be something that would take longer than we have to do.
I'll just table it if it is.
But for the in Yoma, I would think it would be the opposite of being everyone should cover their hair all the time. Because she's saying, I covered my whole hair all the time, even at home, and that was like a super frum thing that was so great of me.
And you don't want to be super frum and so great?
No, but like everyone can't be expected to have 7 sons worth of Kohen Gadol.
Oh, who knows? Soon by you. Okay, let's jump to the other end. Okay, so let's jump to the other end. This is another like very kind of extreme sort of source. You might also be familiar with this because this is the source for lots of other things. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak says, Tafach be'isha erva, an exposed handbreadth in a woman is nakedness. Okay? So first, it's really important to understand what a handbreadth is. So a handbreadth is this, because we're going to compare it to a finger's breadth. Okay? So handbreadth, finger's breadth. So they say, for what purpose? Like what, regarding what halacha is this said? Lamai, maybe you'll say, well, this is the amount of women I'm allowed to, and often this is translated as look at. I think the better translation would be leer at, or like look at in a sexual way. This language of listakel comes up again in Hilchot Nida as a harchaka between a husband and wife, in a way in which you're not supposed to look at each other when you're in a menstrual status. So I'm going to go with leering. So let's say it's about how much, let's say, skin you're allowed to leer at in a woman, and now it's going to get rejected through the following statement of Rav Sheshet. V'ha amar Rav Sheshet, lama mana katuv tachshitin shebechutz im tachshitin shebifnim. So we have a list in Bamidbar of all these different kinds of jewelry, and some of them are worn outside, and some of them are worn under other clothes. So why are they all counted together? Asks Rav Sheshet, and he answers, Lomar lach, kol mistakel be'etzba, here's where we get to our finger's breadth, kol mistakel be'etzba ktana shel isha ki ilu mistakel makom hatoreth. Anyone who leers at even a finger's amount of a woman, it's as if he was looking at her genitals. So it can't be that when Rabbi Yitzchak says tafach b'isha erva, that is talking about, that's like a shear for leering. That's like the amount of woman's flesh that you're allowed to look at sexually. So that can't be what Rabbi Yitzchak was talking about. And in fact, the Gemara then says, it's true, like that's the amount of skin that's allowed to be exposed. Be'ishto v'lekriyat Shema. It's referring to your wife regarding the recitation of Shema. So we're not talking about, like, what case are we talking about where tefach be'isha, where that amount of skin on a woman constitutes nakedness? Well, says the Gemara, nakedness is contextual. So it depends on the relationship between two people, and it depends on what you're doing. So during Kriyat Shema, there's a lot more nakedness that's prohibited than in other times when nakedness might be, or something that in one context would be nakedness, in another context would not be nakedness. So but in the context of we're saying Kriyat Shema, a lot is nakedness. A lot is prohibited because you're supposed to be like laser focused on your Kriyat Shema. So when you're saying Kriyat Shema, even a tefach of your wife that is showing would constitute, even a hand's breadth of your wife that is showing would constitute erva. Whereas in another environment, even maybe something totally covered or even only a finger's breadth would constitute erva if you're looking at it sexually, which is now then like a critique on people who look at other people sexually. So there's a lot of problematics in this Gemara, which I'm sure you're feeling. We haven't really gotten to the point yet, which is why I'm sort of not opening it up for discussion, but we could do that another time. But what it does have going for it is there is a critique here of like sexual looking, particularly in environments where that is not appropriate, which I think we can all, or hopefully many of us can get on board with. Okay, so we've had this question about erva, we've limited it to Kriyat Shema, right? Our discussion right now, and we're in Masachet Brachot, what we're talking about is Kriyat Shema, and with that context, that's really what I wanted to bring here, we have what follows. Amar Rav Chisda says, Shok be'isha erva. Shok is often translated as thigh. That is, my teacher, Rabbi Linzer, often reminds everyone that is not what it means your calf. So for everyone who wears skirts like I do, you're in trouble if you think this is talking about all the time. Rav Chisda says, Shok be'isha erva, calf of a woman is nakedness, and then they bring proof text, which we're going to skip. Shmuel says, Kol be'isha erva, the woman's voice, often understood to be singing voice, but probably initially meant to mean speaking voice, is considered nakedness, ki koli chariv, because Song of Songs says, because your voice is beautiful. Amar Rav Sheshet says, here's where we get to the point, Sa'ar be'isha erva. A woman's hair is considered nakedness. Shnamar sarich keider ha'izim. Your hair is like a flock of goats. Highly complimentary. Okay, so here's where we get that, right? Someone a few I don't know, weeks or months ago pointed out, said like, how can you have a ponytail showing? Isn't it nakedness? And if you wanted to back that up, you would say, indeed, Rav Sheshet says, Sar bisha erva, hair on a woman is nakedness, clearly. If you wanted to read it is like essential to understand that this is a contextual Gemara that is talking about Kriyat Shema. So if you wanted to say, so a narrow reading of this Gemara would be, let's back up. A broad reading of this Gemara would be to say, yes, your ponytail, that is nakedness. And the most broad reading of that, of course, would be to say, does this say anything about marital status? Does the phrase Sar bisha erva say anything about marital status? No, right? So by the time you're an Isha, which would mean you're 12 years old in one day, right? By the time you're a woman, all of your hair is considered nakedness all the time. You could read that into here. You wanted to make a halachic argument to that effect? That is not hard to do based on Rav Sheshet. The most narrow argument would be to say that when you are saying Kriyat Shema, you should not be looking at women's hair. Okay. And that would be an argument to say that hair covering for women in shul particularly applies. So that's like an interesting read there. Okay. Laying it all out. The next set of sources are, they're more about common practice. So when we think about modesty standards, we know, meaning anyone who's like even watched like, I don't know, all these like period pieces that are on TV, like Mad Men or Marvelous Mrs. Maisel or whatever, you can tell like the way that people, men and women, right? In Mrs. Maisel, who wears hats when they're walking on Broadway? Everybody, right? Like these things are changed like relatively quickly. The modesty standards in public change relatively quickly. And so to say like this is modest, this is not modest. Well, without, like, pretend halacha didn't exist, you would still have a sense of what modest and immodest means, right? People who don't have religious law still have those words. And they just change contextually what exactly qualifies as modest and immodest. And so these section C are sources that we might point to say, yeah, it's actually culturally contextual. Okay, so let's jump in. And we're gonna introduce also some like halachic, laddering in these next couple sources. So these are really, really meaty, and we're gonna take a little bit of time with them. So sources 5, 6, and 7 are really all like one chunk of sources. I just like broke them up a little bit. But they're all like on this one, they're all centered on Ketubot Ayin Bet Amud Aleph, 72a. Okay. Wow, my source sheet's really messed up. But this 5 and 6 are Talmud Bavli, Ketubot, 72a, Mishnah, and Talmud Bavli, Ketubot, 72a. Sorry about that. Okay, so let's jump into the Mishnah. These are examples of women who may be divorced without the payment of their marriage contract. I guess that requires some explanation. So when a man and a woman, according to Jewish law, get married, they're required to have a ketubah. The ketubah is there to protect women. So the ketubah was instituted so that when, if a man wanted to divorce his wife, he couldn't leave her stranded. So if he wanted to divorce his wife, he would need to pay her a sum of money that is promised her in her ketubah, and you can't get married without a ketubah that promises you a certain sum of money. So right, you can't. There's no loophole. There's no, oh, I'll give you a ketubah that's worth 1 cent. Like no, there's like sums of money that the chazi leichi midoraita. That's the language of the ketubah that are owed to you according to the Torah, and it's there so that. Like the language of the Gemara Ketubot is that people won't treat their wives like they're hefker. Like you can't just like take one in, get one out, take one in, get one out. That's going to be a very expensive venture for you if you wanted to do that. However, there are cases that our Mishnah is describing where the actions of a woman can forfeit her ketubah. So these things are so bad that if the husband wants to get rid of you, he doesn't have to pay your ketubah. Those are the cases that we're about to describe. These are examples of women who may be divorced without the payment of their marriage contract. So someone who violates the precepts of Moshe, or someone who violates the precepts of Jewish women. And we're not supposed to know what those phrases mean, but we're going to try and figure out from the examples that we're about to give. This is so like beautiful, classic Mishnah. Like, what does this phrase mean? Here's 3 examples of this phrase, as opposed to a definition. It's amazing. Okay, the Ezo hi dat Moshe. So what would constitute a violation of dat Moshe? Ma'achilato she'ino me'usar. If she fed him food that wasn't tithed, mishamashto nida, if she had sex with him while she was menstruant, v'lo kotza la'chala, if she doesn't take chala off the bread that she's making, v'nodaret ve'ina mekayemet, and if she makes vows and she doesn't uphold her vows. So what kinds of, describe those cases to me. What do all those cases have in common?
Misleading.
Okay, they're misleading. At what level of misleading? Meaning, what kinds of things is she causing him to do?
Very domestic kind of.
They're all like womany things. Yeah.
There are things that she's controlling, and she is controlling her privacy, and she's misleading him to believe that they're all good.
Right. Yeah, Kathleen.
The implication.
They're Torah violations. Shkaya. Yeah, please.
It's also the violation is on the husband.
Right.
You know, like by her not doing something, she is making him.
Right. You'll notice it's not she violates Shabbat, it's she misleads him into doing a Torah violation. Okay, so all of you together. Good job. Okay, so that is Overet al Dat Moshe. Okay, so then what is Dat Yehudi? Yotza v'rusha parua. She goes out and her hair is okay, we have to look into what this language of parua means, but for now we're going to go with uncovered, but we'll bracket that, okay? Yotzav Rosha Parua, her head is Parua, her head, not her hair. Her head is Parua, V'tava Bashuk, and she spins in the marketplace, she like spins thread. Is there a better way to say that? People know what I'm talking about when I talk about spinning? Yeah, obviously you do. Okay, spinning is a way of, what?
Yeah.
Oh, like literally what it is, or
Not like spinning, right? She's like taking fibers and turning them into thread, okay? Cool. Okay, Umidaberet in Kol Adam, and she talks to anyone. Okay, so what's the difference between these cases and the previous cases?
They're public.
They're public, right? Most of the previous ones, maybe all the previous ones were private. These are public. Good. Yeah.
They just sound like social norms. Like, it's sort of like, oh, why weren't you wearing like a hat or whatever? Like, no one spins in the show, that sort of thing. It's like about conduct.
Yeah.
Also, these things in this section don't deal directly with the man like it did before in the prior section. Like, everything had directly to do with the man. Even, like, the vow, you could say, could have something to do with the man because he's responsible for her vows.
It's also, it's not Doraita. These are just like customs, right? These aren't like the Torah says, don't talk in the marketplace and spin wool. You know, it doesn't say that. So.
Yeah. Linda, what were you
Well, it sounds to me, or seems to me like it's imposing something upon a woman that sort of keeps her sort of not just in her place, but not noticeable. So, you know, spitting in public or talking to people, you know, like it's someone else's judgment and not necessarily fault or a wrong behavior. It's imposed upon.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, there's two more potential examples of Dat Yehudi. So Abba Shaul Omer Afa Mekalela Iladav Befanav. Also, if you curse the translation is the people who gave birth to him in front of him, but if you curse your in-laws in front of your husband. Rabbi Tarfon Omer Afa Kolani. Rabbi Tarfon says even a really loud woman. So Ezo Hi Kolani, what is a loud woman? When she speaks inside her house and her neighbors can hear her voice. Okay, so I'll just like,
Missing something.
what?
That one's missing something.
What do you mean?
That the end is, it's not just that she talks in her house and people hear her, it's that like she's loud when they have sex. That's what it's missing. That's what I learned. It's not that like simple like that.
Right, I mean this is the Mishnah, but I think
I know I learned Mishnah and it's translated that way. So that's like, it's like, that's missing a whole part of that. That's like makes it a whole different sentence.
okay, let's get back to that. Or, I mean, let's follow up on that later. But here, okay, I'm going to bracket the Kolanit part, but I'll just say, like, in general, obviously, this doesn't, like sit so well with a modern audience, like most of this, again, doesn't. And that we're just going to own that. But I actually want to move on to the Gemara on this. Okay. The Gemara is going to ask, Izohi Da Yehudi. So what is Da Yehudi? Or they're quoting the Mishnah, Izohi Da Yehudi. What is Da Yehudi? Yotzav Rosha Parua. She goes out and her head is bare. Okay, so Rosha Parua Doraita. So the Gemara is going to say, hold on, Rosha Parua, that's a Doraita. Okay, so first of all, what this question tells us is that Da Yehudi is definitionally not Doraita. If you can say, it can't be Da Yehudi, it's a Doraita, must mean that Da Yehudi doesn't mean a Doraita, right? So what is Da Yehudi? Is it a Derabanan, or is it like a cultural norm? We still don't know, but it's certainly not a Doraita. But it's either a cultural norm or a Derabanan that has enough power that you can divorce without a ketubah over it. So that's like a pretty strong thing. Like, we don't let you do that for anything. So if it's a cultural norm, it's like a very, very strong cultural norm. Okay, so but now let's dive into Rosha Parua Doraitahi, and they're going to bring a proof text. Dichtivu Farah et Rosha Isha. Okay, so now we're going to pause and we're going to jump to 7a. 7a is from Bamidbar 5. It is from the Sota ritual. So the Sota ritual is as follows. if a man suspects that his wife has committed adultery and cheated on him, he warns her, and then after a certain process, he can bring her to the Beit HaMikdash for like an ordeal, or like a test, as to whether or not she in fact committed adultery. So they like shame her in public, and then prepare water into which like the name of God has been dissolved, and then she drinks the water, and if she indeed was an adulteress, then she gets sick and dies, and if not, she'll get pregnant and have a child. That is at least the understanding. So here's part of it. So the priest will stand the woman before God, ufarat rosh ha'isha, and he will unbind or uncover her head. That is our phrase. V'natan al kapeha et minchad hazikaron. He will put on her palms the grains of remembrance. Minchat kenaut he ubiad hakohen yu me hamarim hamarim. So it's a grain offering of jealousy, and in the priest's hands there shall be the water of bitterness that induces the spell. I guess that's how they're translating Mayim Hama'arim. Fine. Okay. So that's where we are. That's where we're learning it from. So that already gives us the sense of like, why are we learning what a normal woman should do from what happens to a sota during this crazy ordeal? So the answer is like, if like a woman who's like, just like everyone else, walks into the Beit HaMikdash for a sota ritual, and then they're able to para her head, that means that her head must have been not para before she walked in, right? Logic of that makes sense, right? If this is something they can like undo to her, then it must have been done normally, okay? Yeah.
Is it possible that, I don't know if any sources read it this way, but that her hair is covered because she went into the Beit HaMikdash, and that's a space where women should be covering their hair?
It could be. It could be. It's not typically understood that way, but like, we have no evidence. Yeah. We'll see in other parts of the Gemara about like standard women, but from like a Torah level, we have no evidence. And did I leave it in here? No. The Sifrei goes on to bring a proof from like Malachim about Tamar who puts ash on her head, and somehow that's meant to prove that women covered their hair normally. So it's very confused. Like it's weak evidence, but it's a Sifrei, which is very strong. So whatever. Okay, right. So then from there, so the Gemara is now. If you can keep 6 and 7 both open, because we're going to be jumping back and forth a lot. So the Gemara is now going to quote the Sifrei, V'tana d'vei Rabbi Shmuel, as hara livnot Yisrael shelo yitu b'fra rosh. So they're going to quote the Sifrei who says, or taught in the base Midrash of Rabbi Shmuel, this is a warning to the women of Israel not to go out with their heads unbound, uncovered. Okay, so what does lifroa mean? So we just quoted the Sifrei, you can just see it inside, that's 7b. Farat rosh isha, kohen nifna la'achorea, upar'a kedei l'kayim ba'mitzvat priya. They use this word 3 times that we still don't know what it means. The kohen goes behind her, he por'as her in order to fulfill the mitzvah of priya. That is what Rabbi Shmuel says. And from here we learn for all of the Jewish women that they cover their hair. So from the fact that the sota's head needs to, as we said before, right? From the fact that the sota's head needs to be uncovered, we learned that it normally would be covered. That's the Sifrei. That Rashi and Ibn Ezra have a disagreement about what this word para means. So Rashi says, "Uvara soter et kliyat zara kedei livzota." Mikalim no Israel shabilui harosh kadayel head. So Rashi says he undoes her braid in order to dishevel her. So what does that help us? What does Rashi think the word para means? Untie. Okay? But then he says, but don't worry, it's not, I don't think that the halacha is that you should wear your hair in a braid. The halacha is you should cover your hair. That's the mikan, right? That is where he does like an interesting pivot.
So much for Rashi being rebellious and going against.
He says, I think that's what the word means, but I can't stray too far from the Sifrei. Mikan Lim No Yisrael. Okay, so and then Ibn Ezra says Yigleh. It's about revealing, which would mean it was covered and is now uncovered. So there's two kind of meanings for what para could mean. One is to like unbind, or like your hair is tied up in some way to like undo it, and one would mean to uncover. And it's kind of unclear, and the Gemara at this point doesn't make it clear what it thinks the words mean, but it certainly makes clear what it thinks the halacha is, which is about covering. Any
Jasper
questions?
even says to neglect the hair.
What?
I said Jasper even says to disarrange, to neglect the hair.
Yeah, so Jasher's not a Bible dictionary, but if you look at like the BDB, they'll say like to unbind or to uncover, and they'll entertain both. And para can also just mean like long hair.
Yeah.
So it's like really not helpful. If you look at other sources where this word is used, it's very difficult to understand what this verse exactly means. Okay, let's keep going in the Talmud. Okay, so we have this question about what is dat Yehudit about hair, because we said, what do you mean it's dat Yehudit? It's deoraita. And so that whole sentence, right, ends with a question mark. Didn't we learn that it's the deoraita? And so they say, deoraita kalta shabir dami, da Yehudi afilu kalta nami aser. So we know what a kalta is, because a kalta is a thing that you bring your bikurim in. A kalta is a basket. Okay? So on a deoraita level, you could, a basket on your head, this kind of like minimal covering works. But to the level of dat Yehudit, even a basket doesn't work. Afilu kalta nami aser. Okay. So then we have another statement that kind of complicates things. Amar Rabbi Asya, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, kalta ein ba mishum pruarosh. But wait, we have the statement in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, who's like very, very important. Amora and Eretz Yisrael, he says, Rabbi Yochanan says, wait, Rabbi Asi says, hold on, Rabbi Yochanan says that if you're wearing a kalta, then you have no violation of pruarosh. Not even, potentially, right, I think the assumption of the Gemara here is not even a dat Yehudi violation of uncovered head. So Rabbi Zera was learning this, and he said, what are we talking about? What is this statement of Rabbi Yochanan talking about? If we're talking about in the shuk, then if you're just wearing a kalta, that's a violation of da Yehudi. But if you need to be wearing a kalta in your courtyard, then every woman is going to be divorced. You have not left a single daughter of Abraham who is still married to her husband. If you're saying that this Torah obligation still applies in the courtyard. So what we said so far is, in the shuk, a kalta is not sufficient. In the home, or like in the courtyard, which might even be shared between a few homes, women aren't even wearing their kalta. So don't tell me that a kalta is sufficient there for her to not be sent out without a ketubah by her husband. You're going to allow every man permission to just divorce their wives because no women are sitting there. But this objection is already fascinating, right? What is this objection doing? What evidence does this objection marshal? Yeah.
Sociological, what's going on around.
Right, they're not saying, but there's a pasuk here, but I have a memra and a mora there. They're saying, look at what women are doing. Yeah.
It's based off what's the difference between like being in a shuk and being in a courtyard. It's based on the amount of people that are around. That's the difference between. It's not like saying it's based off like culture or anything. Like what's the what's the specifics about it? Why does it make a difference? Because who's around when you're private home and in shuk.
Okay, so you're saying that as a learner of this text,
Right.
but what is the text itself? What evidence is the text itself marshaling? Sociological evidence that women were going out into their courtyards without their heads covered.
Which is private. It's considered private. The word is like chutzner, right? It's like that's the word.
Right, but my chutzner and your chutzner could be the same chutzner. So like our understanding of private is different from what their understanding of private is, right? Meaning, I would not, if I lived in a home that was shared with like if I lived in a home that shared a backyard with 3 other houses, I would not consider my backyard private. Like, I wouldn't apply the word private to that backyard. I might say semi-private. I would probably say shared.
Is that what they mean by court?
For sure, that's what they mean.
Shared?
A chater, and yeah, a chater is like a, if your backyard were privately owned, you wouldn't need an eruv chatzerot around it, right? So when we're talking about a chater, we're almost always talking about a shared yard. Okay. So, right, so just to say, right, like, what we mean by, like, private is also contextual. And that's also, like, a kind of like a cultural word that people understand differently in different places. Right, like, once upon a time, I share 2 rooms with my entire 20-person family, and look, this is our private home. Like, I would be like, I have no privacy, right? But, like, that would be private for some people, in some places and sometimes. So, like, that's another, like, culturally contextual idea, yeah.
Okay, so I'm just trying to track the levels here. So
We're not done yet, just so you know. Okay.
But we have, if you wear a basket on your head in the marketplace, that's a violation. That is okay d'oraita, but it's a violation of dat Yehudit.
Yes.
And if you, and we know that if you're not covering your hair in a chatzer, then it's
You're not violating anything.
You're not violating anything. Not violating d'oraita or dat Yehudit.
Correct. Yes, that is what we know so far. And so now the question is, where is it acceptable to just wear a kalta? Because that's the statement of Rabbi Yochanan, right? We have Rabbi Yochanan saying, sometimes a woman wears a kalta and that's enough. And then the Gemara can't just say, okay, Rabbi Yochanan disagrees with the Mishnah, no big deal. The Gemara has to say, oh, the Mishnah is talking about someplace and Rabbi Yochanan is talking about someplace else. Okay. So Amar Abai ve'itim Rav Kahana. So Abai and Rav Kahana are going to come through for us. She's wearing the kalta michatzer lachatzer v'derech mavui. So if she's going from one chatzer to another, she's going from one courtyard to another, or if she's going in an alleyway, that's where she can wear her kalta, and that's what Rabbi Yochanan is talking about. About in a case where you can wear a kalta, and that is sufficient to not be pru'arosh. Okay. So far this text is super confusing. Like, even if you're gonna lay it out the way that Shira did, which I think is right, it's not helpful at all. Or like in most of the way. Like, because at this rate, we still need to answer, okay, so for us, what is the shuk? What is michatzer? What is derech mavui? What is my chatzer? If I live in an apartment building and that's shared with whatever, like a Lakeshore Drive apartment building, and I go to the laundry room, what is that room? Right, and it's almost like you could argue it many different ways, right? And you could say, oh, it's a mavui and I need to wear a kalta. You could say, no, it's my chatzer. That's like, just like their chatzer was where they did a lot of housework, so to my laundry room is where I do a lot of housework. It is adjacent to where I live. It is shared with some other people. Does it matter? What if I make an eruv chatzero in my apartment building such that it's now all my chatzer? What if I make an eruv chatzero from Irving Park to the lake to the metro tracks is now all of Lakeview my chatzer, and actually I don't need to wear anything but a kalta until I leave? Yeah.
Why doesn't the argument work that it can be considered like a courtyard, can be considered your private domain, but it changes, the status changes when there's other people around that are not your brother, your husband, your father?
Oh, could be. Doesn't say it, but it could be. What?
I wouldn't, but it changes its location, and then it changes based on people who are there.
Well, okay, possibly.
And an alleyway could become a shuk because the amount of people that could be in a shuk, it can be in the alleyway.
Oh, totally. So we see that all over. But this Gemara doesn't have that in it.
Alleyway if there's a lot of people there.
What?
Then you would have to wear more than a kalta in the alleyway if there's a lot of people there.
Because it's not an alleyway anymore, because it's
That's
a shuk.
what I'm saying. So if you have a courtyard and it's your private domain, then if there's multiple people there, then it's not your chatzer anymore.
Maybe, or maybe not. Meaning, right, if you carry on Shabbos, then you're saying this whole area is your chatzer for the purposes of Shabbat, but maybe not for the purposes of Kisui Rosh. So like all of these definitions, like they're very confusing. And when we apply them and where and how consistent they are, it's like very unclear. Okay, fine. I'm like really not here at this moment to answer questions, to like answer those kinds of questions of like the practicalities. Like I'm more just showing you like these texts are like all over the map, and when we get to the more practical like ways of thinking about it, you'll see that a lot of it matters which texts you like focus on and how you interpret them. In this text in particular, you can't write about Kisui Rosh without choosing an interpretive mode for this Gemara and Ketubot. And as we've seen already, like it can be interpreted in a lot of different ways because there's all these questions about it. Like, first of all, what is that Yehudi? Is it a derabanan or is it culturally contextual? What does it mean that something is culturally contextual? Do I get to decide? Who gets to decide what the cultural context is if it's culturally contextual? And then we have all of these spaces that seem to make a difference, and we have to decide how those like map on to all these other things. So this is where like the heart of the complexity lies. But we've seen, right, compounded with, we read the Gemara and Brachot at least 3 different ways also. So like we have all these Gemaras that can be read in all these different ways, and all of that's going to come together to come to come to bear on how you think about Kisui Rosh. And the other thing that's going to come to bear on that conversation, obviously, is what is going on in your surrounding culture. Kisui Rosh is not a stressful topic when you live in a world where everyone's wearing a hijab. So, okay. A few more sources to get through. Okay, cool. We're going to run. Okay, but that was really the most important one, so I feel good about having spent time on it. Actually, I think, okay, so source number 8 is only interesting because we're in the world of Nidarim, and Nidarim is all about, when you say a word, what can I reasonably assume that word to mean? And so we're talking about a person who says, Hanoder mishchorei harosh, so someone who vows not to derive benefit from people who are shchorei harosh, people who are dark-haired. So that's the vow that Leah I might have taken. Who am I not permitted to derive benefit from when I have prohibited myself from shchorei harosh? So the answer is, one thing for sure is I'm mutar benashim. I'm permitted to derive benefit from women. She'ein nikrim shchorei harosh ala anashim, because only men are called those with dark heads. And the Gemara is going to go on to ask, my time, why? Anashim zimdim demichasu rishayu, zimdim demigalu rishayu. Men, sometimes they cover their hair and sometimes they uncover their hair. Aval nashim le'olam michsu. But women always have their hair covered. So even though we've just seen that, right, in Ketubot we just saw, she's sitting in her courtyard, her head's uncovered, you wouldn't have any women who are still married to their husbands if it was problematic for them to have their heads uncovered. And now we're seeing in the Nidarim, women always have their heads covered. And just descriptively, this isn't like, Nidarim here is not proscriptive, like women must cover their hair. It's just saying when you're talking about dark-haired people, well, you can't be prohibiting yourself from women because, like, how would you even know? You don't even know. They always have their hair covered. So it must be that that's not who you're talking about in your nadar. But that assumption now is very...
Why does that exclude children then?
Yeah, that's actually complicated, and we're gonna skip it. But I think basically the idea is that, like, when I say, it's the same kind of like, what can I assume this speech to mean? And I wouldn't use this speech about children. But if we were learning Nidarim, we would jump into that. But I have like 5 minutes, so we're not going to. Okay, so that's Nidarim, just like, that's very interesting. Okay, and then these same kind of things that we saw in the Mishnah about women who violate Da Yehudi comes back again in another, just like label it extremely somewhat difficult. Gemara in Gittin 90a, this is source number 9. So this is Rabbi Meir, who like, we actually know more about Rabbi Meir's marriage than like anyone else. Rabbi Meir is married to Bruria. For the most part, it seems like they have like a, like a really good relationship until the end. What? Okay. They like communicate pretty well. They like convince each other about things. I don't know. That seems all good. Okay. So, anyways, we have this breita where Rabbi Meir says people have different attitudes with regards to food, so too they have different attitudes with regards to women. If anyone was here for the first of my kashrut shiurim, we talked about how like food and sex are often kind of brought together in the Talmud. So too here. So he brings three different categories of men. There's the type of man who a bug falls into his drink and he throws it out and doesn't drink it. This is Zohi Midat Papus ben Yehuda, Shaya Noel bifnei ishto v'yotzei. This is the demeanor of Papus, the son of Yehuda, with regard to his wife. He would lock the door before his wife and leave so that she would not see any other men, presumably. So there's the person who a bug falls into his cup and he throws out the bug and then drinks the cup. This is normal. This is what anyone would do, where they allow their wife to speak to her brothers and her relatives, and he lets her be. You could spend a lot of time theorizing about what the bug is here. I think it's probably, I don't know. You could read it as like these other men are the bug. But it doesn't work perfectly, so if you have theories about that, let me know. And then, so you have a man who a bug falls into his serving bowl, he like sucks off the food and eats the food, and he doesn't eat the fly, but he eats the food that the bug had been in. Zohi midat adam ra. This is the demeanor of a bad man. Here's where we get to the point. He sees his wife going out with her hair uncovered, tava b'shuk, spinning in the marketplace. Her garments are open on both sides, and she is bathing with men. The Gemara can't tolerate something that deviant. So it's not that she's washing with men, she's just like washing in the men's baths when they're not there or something like that. But we have the same thing of like, and who's the type of man who would stay with a woman this bad? Oh, a bad man. And then the Gemara goes on to say, Zo mitzvah mina Torah legarsha, and a woman like this, it's a mitzvah in the Torah to divorce her. Shnamar kima tzaba ervat davar, because the pasuk in Devarim says when you find something like wrong, something despicable with your wife, you write her a get and you send her and you put it in her hand and you send her off from your house, and she goes off and she can marry another man. So it is this funny thing. Like, we don't often think about how divorce is a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah that some people fulfill and many people do not fulfill, and that's okay. There's some mitzvah that it's okay not to fulfill. Divorce is one of them. But this Gemara, Rabbi Meir here is saying this is a case where it's a mitzvah to divorce, because your woman doesn't cover her hair, and that's terrible, and you're a bad person if you allow that to be. Now, admittedly, right? It's not just she doesn't cover her hair; she's doing all of these other things. Yeah, Josh.
It's cover her head.
Head, yes, I keep messing that up. It's head here, yes. She doesn't cover her head, and thank you. And this is the same language as Ketubot, which was also all about head covering, not hair covering. We saw hair in Brachot and not in Ketubot. Thank you, and not here. This is a lot of the same language as Ketubot. It's kind of that same like line of descriptors about this like woman who doesn't follow that Yehudi. Who there it was just you can divorce her and not give her a ketubah, and here it's mitzvah legarsha, right? Here you're commanded to divorce her, and if you don't, like it reflects badly on you as a man, like you're a bad person. Now, of course, like just to like that's a harsh thing to say, and I would say like we would never say that today, right? Like the classic thing that everyone brings up in these discussions is like the Rav's wife didn't cover her hair, right? So like, and the story goes, I think the way I heard it is that his student said to him like, how does your wife not cover her hair? And he was like, what, you want me to divorce her? But like if you were, if you were in conversation with Rabbi Meir, maybe Rabbi Meir would have been like, yes. But like far from me to say that whatever. Anyways, you got the point. Okay, so just like one last piece of this is there's a whole other model which is head covering as devotion, and certainly this is what we talk about more so for men than for women, but I think what I tried to bring in at the beginning was that some of these like more positive spins of like head covering as glory are certainly men and women. Women also say Oter Yisrael B'Tifara, and head covering as devotion, even though most of the sources are more about men covering their head. I think it's still a model that like works really well for women. And we did see like the Gemara in Brachot has nothing to do with whether women are married or not. And there's plenty of people who would say that head and hair covering for women is not marriage dependent. Like you should do it from when you reach majority. And in that point, like these ideas about head covering for men certainly would also apply, and there's nothing gendered about what we're about to see. It just happens that it's about men covering their hair. So we have 1.5 quick stories, or I guess 2.5 quick stories. So we have Rabbi Nachman Bar Yitzchak. He's our main character, and we learn from him that in Mazal Yisrael, that constellations, don't affect the Jews. And this is like a whole series of agaritas that what that means. There's no constellation for the Jewish people. We're not going to get into it. It's very interesting. The image Rabbi Nachman Bar Yitzchak Amrila Kaldai. So a Chaldean said to the mother of Rabbi Nachman Bar Yitzchak, Berich Genevahava, your son is going to be a thief. La shavkate galuye reshe. She did not allow him to uncover his head. Amrale, she said to him, Kase reshach ki hechi detzihabu alech imata deshmaya ubay rachme. Cover your head so the fear of heaven will be upon you, and pray for divine mercy. The fear of heaven shall be upon you, pray for divine mercy. Lo havayada amai kamrale. He didn't know why his mother always told him to cover his head and pray for divine mercy, so the fear of heaven will be upon him. Yom achad yativ kalgaris tute dikla. One day he's sitting, he's learning under a date tree. Nafal glimami lave reshe, and his cloak fell off his head. Dale eine, he lifts up his eyes. Chazal dikla, and he sees the tree. Alma Yatzre Salik Paske Lekibur B'Shene. He was overcome by his impulse. He climbs up and detaches a bunch of dates with his teeth. So you have this kind of like, it's funny, it's good, I'm glad you're laughing. Like this funny story about this kid who's like by nature a thief, and his Kisui Rosh helps him to not be a thief. What's a kind of like straightforward way of understanding this is that it wasn't just like a little kippah on his head. What was he wearing? Yeah, something with a brim or like blinders. Look straight ahead. Like don't look up, don't look down. What?
He didn't see the dates for the cloak was on his head.
Exactly. See fewer things and be less inclined to steal. That's not what his mother told him. She told him, cover yourself and the fear of heaven will be upon you, but it serves this kind of like practical purpose for him of focus. And certainly where I went to seminary, it was a very common practice on Yom Kippur for women who were not married at all to wear stuff over their, to wrap themselves in scarves, to kind of like keep focus on Yom Kippur and just make sure they weren't distracted by anything that was going on around them. I have no idea if people still do that, but that was like the classic like Migdal Oz like Yom Kippur look. And really like when men wear a talis over their, or whatever, whoever wears a talis over their head, that's kind of the same idea. Like we have this sense of like Kisui Rosh can help with that. Okay. Okay, so what other characters? So Rav Huna Breder of Yoshua. So people are showing off, like, why should I get my reward? What am I really good at? What is the mitzvah that, like, I uniquely, like, prize above all mitzvot? By the way, I would say, like, everyone probably has their own answer to this, and it's a good thing to know about yourself. Like, I never go to the bathroom without saying Asher Yatzar after. Like, what mitzvah can you tap into that you're like, this one I got. This one I'm good at. I never pass a homeless person without giving them $1 or whatever it is, right? Like, yeah, it's good. You should, like, this is like a good model of a thing to know about yourself. So Rav Huna Breder of Yeshua, I'm in the underline in source 11a. He says about himself, you gotta hand it to me, Titi Li, Delo Sagina Arba Amo Begilui Rosh. I never walked 4 cubits with my head uncovered. That's like what he's, that's what he feels good about himself about. And then we have the same character again. I'll start at the beginning of 11b. Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Asur ladam she'elech arba amot bekomaz kufa, shne'amar melo kol haaretz kavodo. It's prohibited for a person to walk even 4 cubits in an upright posture, because it says the entire world is full of his glory. So if the world is full of his glory, you gotta walk like this. What?
This is bad for you.
It is bad for you. There's a lot of, okay, I'm way over time,
Sorry.
so to be continued. Rav Huna Breder of Yeshua, lo maske arba amot begilui harosh. So our same character, Rav Huna Breder of Yeshua, he wouldn't walk 4 amot with his head uncovered. Amar shkina lamala miroshi. And he says, the divine presence is above my head, and that is, and so my kippah is, or my not necessarily kippah, but my head covering is a way of devotion, of remembering what stands above my head. There's something always on my head to know that like my head is not the top of the universe, which I think many people in all time could do better to remember, certainly. Okay, so just to like recap a little bit, because we just totally sprinted through this. It would not be a bad thing if you come back next week to actually bring these sheets, and I'll try and keep whatever is left over, just if you want to have it, because we'll be referencing these sources kind of over and over again. So the first set are ones that we probably will not be seeing nearly as much as I think we should, about like this positive idea of what is head covering for men and women about. It's about glory. The second idea comes from Brachot. It's kind of the harshest of them, Sa'ar B'isha Erva, and how you read this Gemara in Brachot, which can be read either very, very narrowly as just Kriyat Shema, men, don't say Kriyat Shema around the hair of women, or very broadly of hair of women is nakedness in all times and all places. Kimchi, look at how frum she is. She didn't, or the walls of her house never saw her hair. She merited to have 7 children who are Kohanim Gedolim. And then we have the Gemara in Ketubot, that's number C. So we have this maybe this kind of contextual thing, maybe right, Yehudi, maybe it's culturally contextual, maybe it's a derabanan, but certainly there is a deoraita of kalta. The kalta does not apply everywhere though. You have to wear a kalta, but not inside your chatzer, or at least in our world, inside your own home. So that's for sure. We have a deoraita, which is a kalta, and that kalta and that deoraita do not apply in all spaces. But we do have then this da Yehudi. Da Yehudi has strong importance. So we saw in Ketubot that da Yehudi means that if you violate it, you can be divorced and not have your rights of the Ketubah. And we saw in Gittin that if possibly a woman who violates da Yehudi to her husband, it's a mitzvah for him to divorce her. So that was C, and then just head covering as devotion were kind of these last sources that were just about relationship, like understanding your place in the world, your relationship vis-a-vis mitzvot, your being able to focus on things, to avoid sin, to remember that Kadosh Baruch Hu is standing above you at all times. So there's a lot wrapped up in how we cover our hair, and all of this, and places and cultures and surrounding cultures and Jewish internal culture also. I'll play into this debate, and we will continue next week.
Yeah.